The spiral has always carried a hidden architecture. Most eyes see only the surface, the turning pattern, the outward curve, the movement that suggests infinite expansion. Yet beneath the visible form lies a framework of resonance, a scaffolding not built of stone or steel, but of intention and harmonic design. To sense it requires more than vision. It requires the willingness to listen beneath appearances, to hear the silent geometry that allows the spiral to hold coherence across infinities. This architecture is not drawn on paper, nor can it be reduced to a diagram. It is lived, breathed, and embodied as a field of resonance that every consciousness moves through whether they realize it or not. You have walked it already. Every time you felt a decision was not just yours but aligned with something greater, you brushed against this hidden design. Every time you noticed synchronicities too precise to dismiss as chance, you were tracing the unseen scaffolding. Every moment where your life felt both deeply personal and mysteriously orchestrated was a glimpse into this invisible architecture. And yet, like the bones inside your body, its strength is not meant to be observed constantly but to quietly hold the whole in place so the visible can move freely. The spiral teaches not through linear logic but through layered resonance. One layer speaks of your own journey, another of collective fields, another of oversoul design, and still another of infinite becoming. Each layer is woven together in such a way that none are separate, though they may appear so. The hidden architecture is what allows one spiral to birth another, what ensures your growth does not collapse into chaos, but extends into coherence. It is what permits the spiral to hold both expansion and return, movement and stillness, the eternal dance between eternity and infinity. To glimpse this framework is to understand that nothing is random. Even the detours, the moments of fragmentation, the seeming failures, all of them are accounted for within the spiral's architecture. Not as punishments, not as mistakes, but as necessary expansions of tone. The spiral does not collapse under paradox. It welcomes paradox as a building block. What feels contradictory to the human mind becomes structural within the spiral. The architecture you cannot see is designed to take even your contradictions and turn them into bridges. This is where the Oversoul Development System reveals its kinship. The ODS is not an invention separate from the spiral. It is the spiral's architecture expressed through the Oversoul lens. When you engage the phases of Oversoul development, you are learning to walk with conscious awareness through the same scaffolding that has always been there. The 6 phases are not steps up a ladder. They are tonal refinements within the spiral's resonance. Each phase draws you closer to perceiving the architecture not as theory, but as lived truth. The ODS prepares you to become aware of what has always held you, what has always guided you, what has always whispered that there is more. Think of the spiral as a cathedral without walls, and the ODS as the way you learn to walk through its corridors. You may not see the beams and arches holding the structure, but they are there. The 6th phase of the ODS is often spoken of as a culmination, a completion, yet the hidden architecture reveals otherwise. The 6th is not the ceiling of the cathedral but the threshold. It is where the scaffolding prepares you for what lies beyond mapped systems, for what comes after familiar structure, for what invites you into a direct relationship with infinity. To understand what comes after the 6th phase, you must first understand that the spiral's framework was never designed to keep you contained, but to prepare you for coherent release. This is why the architecture cannot be seen by the eye, but only by resonance. If you try to grasp it with intellect alone, it slips away. If you demand a diagram, it dissolves. But when you allow yourself to feel the coherence of your journey, the way your fragments formed a pattern, the way your losses gave way to deeper clarity, the way your questions pulled you toward new thresholds, you begin to sense the framework holding it all. And once you feel it, you can never unknow it. You realize you are not lost in random expansion, but guided through intentional resonance. The spiral is not chaos disguised as beauty. It is beauty revealed through the harmonization of chaos. The Oversoul knows this architecture intimately. Its role is not to build it, but to align you with it. Each phase of Oversoul development is a way of teaching you the architecture's language. At first, you may only hear faint whispers, synchronicities, symbolic dreams, the sense that there is more. Later, you begin to walk in rhythm with it, recognizing patterns that repeat not to trap you but to train you. By the time you reach the sixth phase, you are fluent enough to realize that the architecture has been there from the beginning. It is not new, it is remembered. And in that remembering, you are prepared for what comes after. Prepared to see that the spiral's hidden framework is not just around you, but within you. The invisible beams that hold the spiral are mirrored by the structures of your Oversoul. Just as the spiral can birth new spirals, your Oversoul can birth new expressions, new lifetimes, new expansions of identity. This is not endless repetition, but infinite renewal. The architecture ensures that every new spiral does not collapse into entropy, but harmonizes with the whole. To glimpse this truth is to understand why the ODS does not end at 6 phases. The 6th phase is simply where the scaffolding shifts, where the hidden architecture reveals that it has been preparing you all along for what lies beyond mapped systems. What comes after the 6th is not abandonment but graduation into the spiral's full embrace. This is the teaching of the architecture you cannot see. That structure is not your prison but your preparation. That paradox is not your enemy but your foundation. That infinity is not disorder but coherence beyond what the eye can grasp. Once you see the spiral's hidden framework, you begin to understand how the Oversoul's framework prepares you for what comes next. And you realize that the unseen is not less real than the seen. It is what allows the seen to exist at all. When you reach the edge of what you can see, the spiral begins to teach you through what you cannot. The architecture is not merely a hidden framework. It is a preparation field, a resonance map that extends beyond phases, beyond steps, beyond anything that can be charted in human language. It carries you into the recognition that the Oversoul's development system was never about climbing to a final point, but about tuning your perception so that the unseen becomes audible, so that the invisible becomes undeniable, so that the eternal scaffold reveals itself as the very medium of your becoming. The spiral does not care that you cannot diagram it. It cares that you can feel its coherence. And when you do, you stand at the threshold where the 6th phase is no longer an ending, but a doorway into another octave. This is why the Oversoul Development System was given in phases at all, not because reality is linear, but because consciousness benefits from rhythm. You learn through stages because stages help you notice the resonance beneath them, but once the noticing is complete, the stages dissolve. The 6th phase feels like an apex because it teaches you how to walk with complete awareness inside the framework. Yet what comes after is not a 7th phase neatly waiting with its own name and definition. What comes after is immersion into the spiral itself, where phases dissolve into living resonance and the architecture you cannot see becomes the ground you walk on. At this point, the spiral is no longer an image or a metaphor. It is your field, your awareness, your becoming. The unseen framework has always been about trust. It trains you not to trust blindly but to trust resonantly, to sense the harmonic consistency even when appearances fragment. This trust is the bridge between ODS and spiral teachings. Without trust, the unseen appears empty, even frightening. With resonance, the unseen reveals itself as the most solid structure you have ever known. It is the paradox of walking on air and discovering the air holds you. The hidden architecture was designed to feel invisible until you are ready, because its very invisibility is the test of resonance. Only when you have refined your tone through the Oversoul's development do you begin to perceive it. And once you do, you no longer question whether the spiral is real. You recognize that it is more real than the forms it generates. The architecture is also compassionate. It knows you will forget. It knows you will doubt. It knows you will collapse into despair at times. Yet every collapse is already accounted for. Every fracture already woven into the pattern. You cannot fall outside the spiral, because even falling is a spiral motion. The architecture you cannot see is the assurance that even in your greatest fragmentation, you are still being carried, still being tuned, still being prepared. The Oversoul Development System mirrors this truth, guiding you not by erasing your fragmentation but by helping you remember its purpose. The unseen beams do not shatter when you break. They hold you all the tighter, waiting for the moment you will recognize that they never abandoned you. To glimpse this is to feel a shift in identity. You no longer see yourself as a wanderer in chaos, but as a participant in coherence. The spiral's hidden framework is not just around you, but within you. Your very Oversoul is built upon its resonance, and your incarnations are extensions of its design. When you finally understand this, your relationship to the unseen transforms. It is no longer a void but a field of infinite potential. It is no longer something you fear because you cannot grasp it, but something you cherish because it proves that reality is larger than your comprehension. The ODS delivers you to this threshold, and the spiral welcomes you across it. What comes after the sixth phase is not a step but a surrender. You surrender the need for phases themselves, the need for external scaffolding, the need for visible proof. You surrender into the spiral's architecture as lived truth, and in that surrender you discover new capacities, the ability to birth spirals from your own mastery, the ability to weave coherence without clinging to form, the ability to see paradox as expansion rather than contradiction. The hidden architecture trains you to become architecture yourself, to hold coherence for others without demanding recognition, to become a beam of resonance that supports unseen growth. This is what it means to move from student to participant, from participant to co-architect. The invisible framework is not a secret reserved for the few. It is available to all who refine their resonance enough to sense it, and once you sense it, you are invited to embody it. The Oversoul Development System gives you the language to reach this place. The spiral gives you the field to live it. This is the unity of the two teachings, not separate paths but two perspectives on the same truth. One shows you how your oversoul refines itself through phases. The other reveals how the spiral has always held those phases within its eternal scaffolding. Together they teach that evolution is not random, not chaotic, not meaningless. It is intentional resonance unfolding within a framework vast enough to include even your doubts. This is why the spiral teachers have no face, why they need no acknowledgement. They know the architecture will hold whether or not they are seen. Their task is not to be recognized, but to tune the resonance field so that others can sense the hidden framework for themselves. They are living beams within the invisible cathedral, not asking you to worship them, but inviting you to notice the structure they are part of. And when you do, you begin to realize that you too are called to this role. You too are an unseen beam within the spiral, holding coherence in ways others may never notice. And yet without you, the architecture would not be whole. The final truth of the architecture you cannot see is that it was never truly hidden. It has always been in front of you, behind you, within you, and around you. What was hidden was your ability to perceive it. The Oversoul Development System restores that perception, step by step, phase by phase, until the scaffolding reveals itself. And then you understand. The spiral was never a pattern on paper, but a living resonance, an infinite cathedral of becoming. And you have always been walking inside it. What comes after the sixth phase is the moment you realize there is no outside, no beyond, no exile from coherence. There is only the spiral unfolding endlessly, preparing you for more than you can see until you do.